Welcome to the Cyber Sangha podcast. Cyber Sangha is a program of free live broadcasts, launched in 2009 by renowned teacher and author Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. Join us as we draw on ancient Tibetan wisdom to discover how to connect with our best self and live to our highest potential. The following conversation, Spaciously Being Human, Transforming Jealousy into Openness, happened on October 11th, 2023, as a science and spirituality dialogue with Jungian therapist and Zen teacher Sensei Koshin Paley Ellison, Tibetan meditation master Geshe Tenzin Wangyal, and host Alejandro Chaoul. This was part of a year-long series on embracing life with wisdom and compassion. This content is for informational purposes only. Listeners should consult medical professionals for any physical or mental health concerns. Please use headphones and do not meditate while driving or operating machinery.
Welcome everyone to Cyber Sangha, to another dialogue. My name is Alejandro Chaoul, and I'm delighted to have today my teacher Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche and a good friend, a wonderful teacher, Koshin Paley. Before I introduce them, I wanted to say also Lama Tsomo was going to be here, and she just couldn't make it. She had a last minute thing that she had to take care of, and so she sends her regrets. And also I wanted to thank, because people see us here, but there's so many people behind this that make this happen. So I do want to make sure I don't forget to thank them. Milos, who's a technician always there, Dan Glenn, who prepares all the promotion, and he was doing all this as he was having a child. So congratulations and welcome, Zoe. And then also Polly, and so many others that Mariela in the chat, and so many others. So thank you everyone. Today in particularly, we're focusing this month in Cyber Sangha on transforming jealousy into openness, or embracing jealousy and connecting to openness. And with all that is going in the world now, I think this title of Spaciously Being Human is so important. I don't know about you all, but with all the news that we hear, and we don't know what actually is and isn't, but there's so much going on that it's actually hard being spaciously and human. It seems that our humanity is being taken out of us. So this is so important, this dialogue, and I couldn't have a better panel today. We couldn't have a better panel today. So first, briefly, because Rinpoche doesn't want to be too much introduced, as you will know him here, but he really is the creator of Cyber Sangha, such an important thing, because even he started this before COVID, realizing we are all around the world. Why not be interconnected? So Sangha, this aspect of community, Cyber Sangha, through this way, we can still be connected, even if we see each other in these little cubes, right, in these rectangles. But this aspect of connection, I think it's so important. So thank you, Rinpoche. Just briefly, he trained in a Bonpo monastery in India, in Menri Monastery. And then he graduated in 86, went to Tibet, and then came to the West, lucky us. And he's been in the West, and particularly in the US, since the early 90s, founding Ligmincha International with centers in at least 35 centers. Sometimes it's hard to count, and actually traveling all the time. He was recently in Mexico a few days ago, and other places as well. And we are having, and I know this is not Cyber Sangha specific, but we're having a fantastic retreat next week on Dream. It's a kind of a retreat and conference where we'll have about lucid dreaming. So we'll have Rinpoche, and then we'll have a researcher that researchers on Dream, and we have we have a Tibetan doctor, we have a lucid dreamer, teacher, and we have a Jungian analyst that teaches and dream. So with that, it's a great actually segue to Koshin, because Koshin, you also studied in the Jungian tradition, and then became a Zen monk and teacher. And Koshin, who I know for many years, a dear friend, and I respect him so much as a teacher, particularly in this aspect of contemplative care. He's the co-founder of an educational nonprofit in New York called the New York Zen Center and Contemplative Care. And he has various books, also actually with Wisdom Publication, which I'm happy to. And his books gained national attention, particularly through his contemplative retreats, Soto Zen Buddhist practice, and how the New York Zen Center kind of touches so many lives every year with all the programs, both in person and online. So he's also been featured at the New York Times, PBS, CBS, Sunday Morning, and other media outlets. And welcome, Koshin, to this Cyber Sangha for the first, but not hopefully the last time. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So as we start, maybe we'll start a little bit with you as your guest speaker, and tell us a little bit how through your interest came through Jungian practice and then Zen, or how do they merge, or the floor is yours, or the space is yours.
Well, I think first of all, it's just very sweet to see you and pleasure to meet you, Rinpoche. Just a joy to be together. And in particular in this time, in this week, and where just it feels like the world has been shaken again. And because it has. And so for me, I've always been very interested in the space between what we say we value and care about and what we're actually doing. As Shakyamuni Buddha had taught, that our actions are our only belongings. Like that's the only thing, really. It doesn't matter our awareness in a certain way. It doesn't really matter what we think about anything. And I grew up in a home where, my grandparents and their parents were survivors of Holocaust and pogroms. So like this week also feels very powerful for our family and our family in Israel. And, having really a pogrom happening now, all these years later. And so I grew up with that, and as is common in a lot of the families where that has happened and people are forced to leave, and very similar to maybe the Tibetan people and being forced to leave, as so many groups of people all over the world have been forced to leave. And there's lots of trauma, right? And lots of deep upset and wound. And at the same time, in my family, there's also this courage, that to trust that like it's time to move, time we have to go. And so there's that combination of things. And it is common in many of those families, like my family that I grew up in were both really, really wonderful and, really suffering. And so I was looking for stillness, and also kept watching and seeing how these wonderful people who had really good values also were allowing things to happen that were really awful, and terrifying. And so I was always interested in that integration. So actually my early years, I was 8 years old, and I told my mom that I wanted to grow up to be a Zen Buddhist monk. when I was 8, and because I had seen a picture in National Geographic of this Zen Buddhist monk in Tokyo, just standing there, and all the people around him were blurred. And I just remember feeling like, oh, I want to be that. And that's me. And very beautiful, and so there was an early propensity there, clearly. And so the Zen thread just kept deepening, and I didn't know as a young kid like how to do that. So I was trying to teach myself Japanese, trying to learn about Japanese culture, because that was really my only connection, was just like this picture. And so how do I get to that picture? And then there was this movie called Star Wars, like a long time ago. And I realized, like, wow, you can find a teacher, not like a school teacher, like a teacher who could actually be your spiritual teacher. And so I thought, well, I don't know how to go into Tatooine or some other place. So I waited until another movie came out called Karate Kid, which was the original one. And I thought, oh, I could learn karate. There, you can find a spiritual teacher through karate. And so when I was 11 years old, I marched myself to the local strip mall and met my first karate instructor in this basement, really pretty grungy place. And it was not one of those karate schools where like kids classes. It was just like karate, like aggressive. And yet we would sit on the wood floor in Seiza so your knees are underneath yourself. And it was very painful, not now where we sit in beautiful meditation halls, maybe, and where we on cushions. And this was just on a hardwood floor, and we sweating. It was so painful. And he would walk around, the teacher, Sensei White was his name, and he would walk around us very slowly and say, you will never be free until you can be still with your pain. And I remember thinking, my goodness, this is like superhero training. And I realized also that, the people that I cared about and worried about also didn't know how to be still with their pain. And so that really led me on this wild journey of stillness, valuing stillness. And the Jungian part came much later, like about 6 years later, when I was 17 and started going to these men's retreats that were led by 3 people, one by Robert Bly and James Hillman and Michael Mead. And again, it was so interesting. Like I think about myself as a little boy looking at this picture of this adult and being in the karate school with all these adults, and then being 17, and those men's retreats are mostly like guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And I was like this kid. And so, James and Bly, they really took me under their wing. And so and through Jim Hillman, really learning about the joy of Jungian psychology and the joy of, but mostly the joy of actually really meeting someone. And when you really meet someone, you're nowhere else. And so I think because he was Jungian, I went on that route. But if he was something else, I probably would have just done whatever that was. Yeah. And because it was just like he was completely there. And so that really became an integration of my Zen practice, and which continues to this day. And my love of Jung is also in some ways a debt to this wonderful teacher.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. So before getting into the topic, Rinpoche, when I was listening to Koshin and being this young boy, young adult, getting with all these older teachers and practitioners, it reminds me of your life. That when you were in the monastery, you were asked at the young age of 14, 15 to join in this Shangshu Ninju, in this teachings that were Dzogchen, and you were the youngest one. And I know this is not directly to the topic, but I thought since we are in this dialogue, if you wanted to share some of that.
Well, I think Koshin story is much better than my story. I was not like at that age, did not know, oh, I wanted to do this. That clarity was not there. I always kind of, generally speaking, right from the beginning until even today, almost seems like I find myself in a different situation, not I wanted to be in a very specific situation. So I find myself in a Christian boarding school, then my parents taking me out of there, putting me into the monastery. I find myself in the monastery. They just cut my beautiful hair that I had, and I feel disappointed with that, and find struggling with trying to wear my robes as around 10, 11 years old. And but every moment of my life in the monastery, I felt home. I think that was probably, I was lucky. Instead of feeling, not choosing where to go, finding oneself somewhere and feeling dislocated. I never felt that. I always felt home growing up. And of course, as Koshin said, finding my teacher who at around age 10, 11 until now, over 50 years of this pure relationship connection that I have until today. That's my drive, force, inspiration, everything. So I think I'm very grateful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Rinpoche. So let's start getting a little bit into this topic of jealousy that, of course, is one of the what we call the 5 poisons or afflictive emotions in the Buddhist traditions. But when we go inner and we practice with jealousy, it's so we can feel it so much, right? I mean, and it happens so often and in all these different ways. Tell us a little bit, Koshin, how do you practice? How do you teach it into, and is for you kind of openness kind of one of the antidotes or one of the ways of embracing that aspect of jealousy?
So striking, just guess we're in this moment. I was feeling such jealousy this past weekend of people who, this is the story I was telling myself, not that it's true, right? So I just want to be that, wow, like what would it be like to not be Jewish, and to not have to feel afraid for yourself and your family, to not be a target. And so it was really interesting. That was not like a long feeling, but it was a feeling that arose this weekend. And like, wow, what would that be like? And the jealousy, just kind of that feeling of like, not that I have a fantasy that would happen, but so for me, like that is very core to working with it in my own mind or in the mind itself, is to just see what's arising and not, to me, I get into trouble, and I feel like students get into trouble, like myself, when we kind of start to think that that thought is true, or that desire for grasping or jealousy. So learning how to feel it without becoming it, right, is me the central teaching. And I found it very challenging and very important. And, I've been having just all of these experiences recently where I'm just really noticing like how I'd love to have a different body, or I'd love to have a different experience. Recently, I had a very terrible, I had excruciating pain because of a skin condition. I have a chronic skin condition, which doesn't sound like a big deal. But let me tell you, this is like excruciating pain, like yelling, so painful. And there were so many moments where I just felt like I could feel like the demon of it, or the kind of beastness of it, and feeling so jealous of people who don't have to have that experience. And to me, it's so important to feel that, because I feel that then I can have more compassion without really experiencing the jealousy of like, I don't want to have this physical pain anymore. When it's like, not up to me. It's not, it's so ridiculous and so human just to feel the feeling of it. Like, oh, I want a different experience. I want not this experience. And to me, again, is really began to like really open my heart and mind to thinking about people screaming. Like, we're here in this little island of Manhattan, and there are people who are unhoused, and often they're sometimes screaming, in the middle of whatever that is, having great distress. And actually here on 23rd Street is a busy street, but it's a bit of a canyon. So like it actually sometimes reverberates a lot. You can hear their cry. And to me, it reminds me of what I've been learning about feeling that jealousy. Was like, wow, like then I heard one of them crying out, and I just felt this incredible tenderness. And it just made me remember, it's like Avalokiteshvara's vow and the Bodhisattva of compassion, like that she hears all the cries of the world. And so when I can actually hear my own cry of jealousy, then I can actually hear yours. But if we start to think it's like, oh, my jealousy, I shouldn't feel this because I'm a Buddhist, blah, blah, blah. It's so unhelpful, and so boring, and it's also so isolating. So just to realize like, oh, jealousy, what's so beautiful about these poisons is that we all experience them. It's actually what connects us. And so I'm so grateful for them to be able to experience it, whether it's with what's happening in Israel or whether it's, from my own experience of illness. If we can feel it without becoming it, or remember to do that, to me, like tenderness and compassion is like the only thing in many ways that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Rinpoche, Koshin said something about, we all have these afflicted emotions, and yeah, we're Buddhist. You are great teachers, and and so people think, well, they don't experience this, right? Because they're beyond this. They're in the spaciousness and the openness all the time. So what would you say to them, Rinpoche?
So first of all, I think thank you for Koshin, your sharing your personal experiences. I think it's a beautiful, real human experiences. I think that kind of genuineness is what we need to express. And as you said, it's not how much we know, it's how we live our life, what we do, how much we know. These things matters than how much we know, because the knowledge is always there. All the Buddhist canyons nowadays, all the knowledge where informations are there in the iCloud, but it's not in the people's heart, in people's action. It doesn't help very much. So I appreciate that. And the other thing I appreciate what you said about, feeling not being. I think that seems like really, really key. There is no way as a human, there's no way we can avoid all this 84,000 afflictions, 5 poison, 3 root poison. There's no way we can avoid them. We all have them. I don't know any human being on this earth, including my teachers. I don't know anybody who does not have them. But it's not, I don't also project to my teachers, say, oh, my teachers, they're not supposed to have this. I don't try to create a story, fantasy about non-human, superhuman. No, I love human beings, real human beings who have real issues, but they deal with issues a little better than I do, better than many of us do, and trying to learn how these things are handled. So how to feel them, not actually becoming them. So that idea of how to feel and becoming them, I think is beautiful, that we all need to really learn that. As the title of this today's talk saying about spacious being human, this is something very fundamental, very basic, that we can, every given moment, we can have these feelings. And I was just this morning had a nice walk. Recently I have this heart rate variability monitor on me, and my heart is good. Just wanted to make sure that people don't worry about that. But I'm having more fun with biofeedback, and so doing this hookup for 3 days. And one of the things it said that I don't get enough exercise, but which I go to the gym almost 6 days a week and spend 1.5 to 2. I said, if I don't get enough exercise, what about all my friends that I know? Then I start to reflect, okay, well, I think I get enough, but the truth, the device is telling the truth, which then I'm trying to think of what it means. And that's true. I go to the gym, I'm trying to find the closest parking place, go to the gym. I don't walk most of the day enough movement apart from the gym. So I started to change that part of I said, every morning I'm going to do a 10,000 step. Afternoon, I'm going to the gym for 1.5 hours. And that's my full, then I will have enough. So I was walking, having a wonderful change, that piece of real change in my life, not drive anymore to my cafe, just walk in the morning and sitting in the cafe, enjoying this beautiful day. I saw a mother and daughter walking toward me. They're just walking in the street, just being open heart, just observing them. I felt so much joy, energy from just looking at them, trying to open up all the experiences the mother is having. The joy, walking with her daughter, holding hand, giving that nourishment, safety, shelter, protection. And I trying to see from the girl feeling this sense of trust, a sense of safe, and sense of feeling kind of playfulness, just kind of jumping her feet around and kind of moving her body, just walking. So much energy, just watching that mother and daughter walking. Literally, I can feel, if I had a device that moment, I could see my device will be, my heart will be completely, totally synchronized with their heart and their energy. I did not have this one. So just being, there's so much experiences you can observe around you, or you can get caught up in your own pain identity and the idea of jealousy, particularly sense of jealousy. I think some sense of competition, healthy competition, I think probably society needs in order to improve, in order to grow, in order to be alert, in order to be in action. But when it comes to when you don't like what other have, or when you begin to not like what other is doing, others' success, others' well-being, others whatever they have, when that becomes a problem for you, then it becomes an issue of jealous, because we in the end we think not what they have, but it's kind of translate into something deeper in yourself, like what you're missing or what you will not have, or worse, there's something somebody has taken away from you. Their success has something to do with your sacrificial, or something they've stolen from you. This is where the critical problems, when it becomes, you observe that, because everybody can do equally well, but everybody needed to give, everybody's success is everybody else's success as a collective well-being. There's no individuality in that sense. I think that sense of spacious human quality, in the end of the day, who cares about other success or your success? We go to the same place where we came from, but ability to hold, sometimes people are having wonderful success, but not necessarily they're having a wonderful life. You might not have a great success, what you're trying to do, but you have a much better life than success, what you're referring to. And also, main critical thing is, what is the definition of success? Success is not, I think most of the time, success is not what frequently people think what success is. That's not a success. Definition for success should be more clearly defined for individual to individual in your own life, what success for me means, or, I think that's important.
Thank you, Rinpoche. It's so beautiful that, as you seeing the mother and daughter, and reminded me actually of a previous conversation we had when we had researcher Barbara Fredrickson talking about these micro moments of happiness, of opening our heart, and how important they are to acknowledge that, and how that supports that sense of openness. Beautiful. This is great as we share the individual stories. I wanted to bring a question that came from the viewers, and this is from Enrique Ara, and he's asking he's saying, is jealousy same as envy? Are we talking about jealousy more as the feeling if someone else has something that I don't, or including the jealousy as the fear of losing someone or something, like when a handsome guy is talking to my girlfriend?
For me, I was very moved by what you were saying, Rinpoche, and just also moved by the question, and just happy to be here. And what strikes me is that all of these things, sometimes we label them as poisons or afflictions, or and there's an older story about Pandora's box, and that there was actually this, box with all the terrible things in it, and right next to it were a box of all the wonderful things. So it's just, but I think it really just depends on how we hold any one thing, because even, desire, sexual desire, or desire for a life of practice, like that, it just depends on how we hold things. Really makes it a huge difference, whether we're holding the mind with respect and dignity is really the place where it gets interesting. And I remember when Chodo and I, who's my husband now, when we met, I definitely had desire, and I found out that he was married, right? I felt jealous because I was sure like he was supposed to be with me, which is so insane, right? It's like it's a story that, you know, we want to change the way things are. And so, and it was also moving away from what I value most, which is respect and dignity for all beings, right? And tenderness and compassion. So it was really interesting to be able just to be really clear, like, wow, you know, like when we started to meet and to talk to each other, I said, you know, you just have to make a decision, you know, because I am actually jealous that you're of this other person, and because I kind of would like what they have, and yet it's not mine, or it's not freely given. And so it was really interesting. So to me, there was like a jealousy, and for me, envy tends to be kind of almost like when jealousy becomes who you are. It's almost like a possession of envy, like that you're no longer feeling it, you're becoming it. And then you're just envious of everything. Why is that person in that line? That line's moving shorter in the grocery store, you know, that it can become actually the way we can function. At least that's my experience, right? And so to me, the key is to really watch myself with lots of tenderness. Just like, oh, look at, it's like the bubbles in the stream. Like there's this beautiful, the end of a sutra called the Diamond Sutra, where they at the very end, it says, you know, like that our lives are like a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud. And just like that, like are also these feelings until we grab onto it. I'm jealous, I'm envious, like everyone, like kind of almost like the world becomes an antagonist. And it's so painful. And I was once training in a monastery, and the, you know, the key part of living in the monastery, at least in my experience, is just, you just flow. And if you don't flow, you create disharmony. It's pretty clear. And I remember this one monk who, you know, you're constantly corrected because you're there to learn and to train. You know, that's actually what it's for. It's for a formation process. And this one person just, you felt like they got defensive, and you could feel their envy towards other people. Why am I being picked on? You know, you could just feel it. And I didn't speak the language, so you could just feel these things. And they had such a hard time because they just like kept having that very tight fist around it. And so I always often think about, there's a wonderful teacher named Kosho Uchiyama Roshi, and he just said, you know, open the hand of what you're thinking, you know, or, you know, as Chodo and I say, you know, like, what's the story you're telling yourself right now? When we're locked in some feeling of jealousy or envy of, you know, some handsome guy, as the question was about, like, oh, what am I tight about here? What am I holding on to that I could actually learn how to open up to and be curious about? And I often, just one last thing is that one of the things I love about practice is it's the opportunity to set things down. What I feel about things, what I think about things, my opinion about things. How do I learn how to set it down? Not let it go or shed it, because I don't know where else it's going to go, but just set it down. Like put it on a shelf or give it to the Buddha.
Thank you. Rinpoche, did you want to add to that or to that question?
Yeah, so I think as Koshin said, end of the day, maybe there are different ways to define jealousy, envy. End of the day, it's like if somebody has something what you don't have, feeling some sense of discomfort, that are jealous. I think it's just unavoidable. Everybody can have. Some people have more than other people, but it's unavoidable for all. But then it is more that I don't like he has it or they have it. Or more than that, because he has something more than I have, I'm going to lose something. I'm going to lose my girlfriend, an example, or I'm going to lose my business, another example, or I'm going to lose my identity, sense of power, who I am, what I identify with. Is idea of something, not what they have. It's more something that what you fear of losing in yourself, because that is where I think the problem arises, the war arises, the very destructive decisions arises, fight, divorce, lawsuit, a lot of pain, collective pain arises just because then you are completely acting out of that. But these feelings are beautiful feelings. Jealousy, envy, all the human emotions are, that's what we are human. If you don't have this emotion, you're not human. So there's nothing wrong about feeling them, but they are definitely not good when you're identifying with them, because you will take a negative action the moment you identify with them, because you're losing yourself. And sometimes they can be so subtle or so sweet. I tell one story that I just, when Koshin was telling you a story, I remind me of one story. As I said, when I was 11 years old, I grew up with my teacher. So basically, he was my father, grandpa, and everything, caretaker and everything. So from 10 to 27, I lived in the same house, same kitchen, in the classes, was in his room, and finishing my graduation Geshe degree. And then after that, also traveling with him to Tibet. So when we went into Tibet after all these years, then in Tibet, I have to go with my father to East Tibet. And he was in this, we have to go in a different way. And then I was, at that point, I was 27, who never, apart from beautiful meditation, very protective space, feeling of safe, but never have this experience of life. You don't have experience. You have different kind of experience in life in the monastery, but outside monastery experience, you don't have. I was ready to just go out and explore the world. And as like a bird, I'm ready to fly, and I'm ready to leave my teacher, family, everybody. It's kind of almost like a careless, like, okay, I'm ready to fly. It's like I see what my son does right now. He's ready to fly. We love you. Oh, okay, yeah, I know you love me. Let me go. You go closer to them. Okay, leave me alone. Just that kind of stuff. I can relate to him, right? I went to different part of Tibet. When I came back, he was telling me. He said, "Oh, when you left, separated from me, I felt sadness. When you left." And he told me in a very open way and expressing his emotions. I heard it, but I did not acknowledge it too much. Like I see what Singh does, right? So he's okay, okay, I hear you. Okay, that's fine. It's fine. So then I came to Italy, and then he came to visit me, and then I took him to the airport. At that moment, he left me, not I left him. He left me. He was going away, and he was leaving me in Italy at the airport. I was so sad. I have so much tear in my eye. I was even shocked to see how much water a human being can have in that, like dropping tears, just like that. And then it was funny. I never thought that could happen. That could happen like that, and that much tear even. When I realized, then afterward I look back, it's like, okay, this time I was not leaving him. This time he was leaving me.
Mm.
And that was a shift of that, and that my tear was he was leaving me. So it's kind of very subtle, very, very subtle, and very, it's, of course, the tear was such a tear of connection and love, respect. But still, there's some sense of I'm losing, he's leaving me. Human experience is amazing. So little things can make so big happening.
Mm. Wow, thank you for sharing that. I've never heard that story. Beautiful. Thank you, Rinpoche. I wonder, I mean, so a number of things that you all said about being still, being able to be still in pain, or pain being physical, as you described the beginning, Koshin, but also emotional, including jealousy and envy and all these other things. And you use this word hold, and Rinpoche uses this word host, kind of being able to hold that, to host that, to whatever it is. And then this feeling, like what Rinpoche was also saying, like coming home, feeling at home in that space, which for me is exactly what we are doing here, right? This spaciously being human, being able to be in that space of hosting. And as Rinpoche says many times, stillness is actually the doorway to spaciousness. And I know we are about to close. And I know I didn't ask you this question before we did the dialogue, but would you guide us in a short practice? Would that be possible? A few minutes?
Sure.
And maybe also, I think it would be good to maybe in this yoga meditation that you will guide to hold prayer in what's happening in the Middle East and also in Ukraine, the wars, how many people are losing their life, how many people are in the fear, how many people are feeling in uncertainty all around the world. Just even just kind of middle of, you don't hear so much news. Suddenly you say there's a full-blown war going on. Even a month ago, you have no clue that was, I mean, like in Taiwan, in China, they're talking about it all the time. But in a situation like that, of course, there's a conflict there. But the whole idea of this scale of war will happen, nobody had any clue a month ago. And that makes everybody feel so uncertain about what is the future is coming. So there are people, many people, actual suffering. There are many people, even they are very living in a very peaceful place, situation, but in their mind, still there's so much uncertainty. Even all of us here, it's kind of, feeling that uncertainty. So I think it would be nice to keep bring in prayer on all of situation in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I feel like that is the dedication is, to me, sometimes our misunderstanding of practice is thinking about it as my practice, as opposed to really sitting in the midst of the world and for the world and with the world. And so thank you so much. And I feel like that dedication really, to realize the impermanence, that even our fantasies of safety are impermanent, and how many people are experiencing the lack of physical and emotional safety and violence every day and this day. So just want to encourage us to find the ground of your sit bones, and to maybe even rock gently back and forth so that you can actually feel those sit bones, those large round bones in your glutes that actually keep us and allow us to be upright. Without them, we actually could not sit upright or even sit up. And if you're sitting in a chair, to feel your feet You're sitting on the floor, holding yourself. Either way, hold yourself with dignity and groundedness. Being aware that we're sitting with the dignity and groundedness for all people and all beings. And then just bringing our attention to our lower belly and just allowing the softness. May we experience that softness of the breath in your lower belly for all the people who are not feeling soft and don't have access to softness, where it all just feels overwhelming and brutal, that we can experience the softness and extend it. And taking a moment just to open your shoulders just a teeny tiny bit, even a millimeter, to also welcome that posture of our physical nature as well as our emotional and spiritual nature. Just how can we be a bit more open? And offering that openness, even a tiny bit, to people who are afraid or consumed by anger, sadness. We're finding a moment now just to feel the lengthening of your spine and uprightness, being clear about what's most important. And can we invite in like that integration of our uprightness of our values with what we actually do and say? The wings of compassion and wisdom. May those inform our actions, our thoughts, and our words, so that we can see each being as whole and fully awake. That capacity. Let's sit together for just a minute or so with this ground and softness and openness and uprightness together. It's comfortable for you to put your hands together. And let's bow together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Koshin. Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, everyone. And may we be softer, more open, and share that with the world, and may there be more peace. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, everyone, that made it possible. And for those who are going to be next week in Virginia, we'll see you there for the dream. Be well. Thank you. Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cyber Sangha podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Cyber Sangha, visit us online at cybersangha.net.